Patriots might actually have an offense. Get ready for some OTA updates here on PatsCast. Welcome to PatsCast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Today was the first OTA session open to the media since Monday of last week, and a lot has changed since then. Drake Maye's made some developments. We had some highlights coming from a few wide receivers, which we'll get to in just a moment, but overall, things were a lot more competitive than what was seen last Monday, which is to be expected. The first OTA is always going to focus more on basic fundamental drills, while today emphasized a lot more team drills, a lot of 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 action. And overall, Drake Maye looks to be developing, and things were somewhat similar to last week, but things seem to be picking up a little bit with Drake Maye and the young receivers that he's working with the different offensive line rotations. We'll get to all of that. But first, the order in terms of team reps at the quarterback position continues to be Jacoby Brissett at number 1, Bailey Zappi at number 2 in the backup role, and then Drake Maye at 3rd on the depth chart. And as we talked about last week, this might just be a seniority thing. It might be giving preference to veterans, if you call Bailey Zappi a veteran. Just making sure guys that have been there longer are getting the first team reps. I would expect that to change quite a bit once we hit training camp. Not even sure Bailey Zappi is going to be on the team once training camp hits, but as of today, it still remained that order: Brissett, Zappi, Maye. And this was the case in 11-on-11s today with the first team, second team, and third team reps. But during 7-on-7s, Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi switched off on one field while Drake Maye worked on his own field and ended up getting a lot more 7-on-7 reps than those other guys because of it. It should also be noted that Joe Milton was kept out of practice, and it's unclear why. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more on that later. But Jacoby Brissett, let's start with him. He had a very sharp practice, both in terms of team and individual drills. He was 6 of 8 in 11-on-11s and 7 of 8 in 7-on-7, so was very accurate throwing the football, was the most accurate in some of the early drills where they have a net and color-coded targets, and they have to practice their footwork and then throw it to the target based on the color that Alex Van Pelt or the quarterback coach gives them. And Jacoby Brissett looked very sharp in those drills, and the fact that he's worked in Alex Van Pelt's system before certainly helped him in some of those team drills as well. He does not have much of a learning curve trying to pick up this offense, and that's certainly going to help in terms of mentoring Drake Maye. But Bailey Zappi, on the other hand, struggled quite a bit. He was 6 of 9 in 11-on-11s, 4 of 7 in 7-on-7s, and did throw an interception, which came from safety Jalen Hawkins on a pass that was intended for Javon Baker. He was also nearly picked off again by Marte Mapu on a throw behind rookie tight end Jaheim Bell, the guy they drafted in the late rounds out of Florida State. So Zappi struggling a little bit in the team drills. Jacoby Brissett certainly looked like he has earned the starting role at this point in time, but we know a lot can happen between now and September, particularly with training camp and the preseason. But the guy we all care about, Drake Maye, is continuing to show strong signs of improvement. He was through just 6 passes in 11-on-11s because he was 3rd on the QB depth chart there. Completed 4 of those 6 passes, but because he had his own field in 7-on-7s, he threw 14 passes there and completed 12 of those. Now, he did start off a bit slow, as we saw in the practice last week, but got better as the day went on. Some of his struggles, he did overthrow a ball to Juju Smith-Schuster on a deep shot. He did, similar to Bailey Zappi, nearly throw an interception to Marte Mapu, and I think the worst throw of the day came on a tight end screen to newly acquired veteran out of the Las Vegas Raiders, Austin Hooper, on a tight end screen. You don't want to be missing throws on tight end screens, so that wasn't great. But After the Austin Hooper miss, he completed 14 of his next 16 attempts. 2 of those came in 11-on-11, and the rest came in the 7-on-7 drills. But his accuracy, I gotta say, from everything I've heard, from the clips I've seen, from the reports that I've read, is far better, like I said, than anything we've seen in his North Carolina highlights, particularly on the short throws. We know Drake Maye can throw some deep bombs, and he can be pretty accurate throwing the football, particularly down the middle of the field. It's those dinks and dunks, those things that Tom Brady relied on for so many years, where Drake Maye actually struggles, and that's where his greatest improvements have come so far 2 weeks in, not even 2 weeks into OTAs. And he's been consistently getting the ball out on time, which was something that Mac Jones did when he first got to the Patriots. The reason why he won the starting job against Cam Newton was he just got the ball out quicker while Cam Newton held on to it. Drake Maye had an issue with that in college. Doesn't seem to be an issue so far, at least in OTAs. Made a lot of tight window throws out of defensive reach. He was pump faking and creating passing windows because of it. And at one point, he threw a no-look pass to Jaheim Bell on a bootleg coming off of a defensive blitz, which, look, I don't love the no-look pass. I don't really see the point. I guess, the defense has their eyes one way and you throw it the other. So I guess there is some usage for it. But seeing him do that already in OTAs is pretty exciting. And we've seen Drake Maye practice those no-looks before. But hitting the rookie Jaheim Bell on a blitz, on a bootleg, running the new West Coast Alex Van Pelt offense, really good to see. And as usual, Drake Maye was the first quarterback to take the field at practice and was the last to leave. He took extra reps once again, and I guess he's been doing this. He did this last Monday when the media was present. He did it all week from everything I've heard. Him, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker stay a few minutes after practice and take some extra reps together, and they were doing that once again at OTAs on Wednesday. And speaking of Javon Baker, he had a hell of a showing on Wednesday. He's the 4th-round rookie, if you don't remember, drafted at a University of Central Florida. There's been some news this week about how Javon Baker was drafted so late. Many thought he might be a 2nd or 3rd-round guy, but there were some attitude issues that people raised some red flags over, but the biggest concern was his dad. I don't think it's as much of a concern as people say. I mean, remember LeVar Ball when Lonzo Ball entered the league and how annoying he was going around to the media with the big baller brand and doing all of that. And then once Lonzo Ball was drafted, we never heard from LeVar Ball again. That often is the case with some of these fathers that are constantly being a part of their players' branding and talking about their play on and off the field. Hopefully that's also the case with Javon Baker. We've heard similar concerns with Caleb Williams in Chicago, but really haven't heard a peep about his father since. Hopefully that is not an issue going forward. But overall, Javon Baker really had a great practice, showing off his playmaking skills, made a sideline leaping catch over cornerback Marco Wilson on a pass from Jacoby Brissett. He also caught another pass from Bailey Zappi with 2 defenders surrounding him and turned upfield for a touchdown. If Javon Baker is ready to go, look, I think Jalen Polk's going to be ready to go. He's going to contribute right away. I bet he's a 50-catch guy and eventually turns into an 80, 100-catch guy. Jalen Polk, I don't really have any concerns about Polk. Javon Baker is the guy who could be the true number 1 boundary X, but has a lot of room to develop. He's making a statement so far. He certainly did on Wednesday at OTAs, and that's really great to see. Him showing off his athleticism, his speed, his route running, his playmaking abilities, his catch radius in traffic with defenders in his face. That's what you want to see. So if Javon Baker is ready, Pats are going to be off and running on offense, and that receiving core is going to look a lot better than we're expecting. I mentioned 2nd-round rookie Jalen Polk out of Washington. He was only targeted once during team drills on a pass from Brissett that was broken up in coverage, also by Marco Wilson. So Jalen Polk he got plenty of action, plenty of reps, but he didn't get a ton of passes thrown his way. I don't think that's much of a concern. But Javon Baker was the real standout at practice today. But the second biggest standout, which is coming as a surprise to most people, is Tyquan Thornton. Now, we know Tyquan Thornton's been working hard this offseason. He was drafted because he ran, I think it was the best 40-yard dash in history, but the speed hasn't shown up on the field. He's like 6'3", but rail thin, small wrists, not the best hands, has really struggled when he's actually gotten on the field. But he played very well at OTAs today. He burned Kyle Duggar in coverage during 7-on-7s on a downfield pass. He caught 3 passes from Drake Maye alone. He looks to be Drake Maye's favorite target, which is surprising. Caught another from Jacoby Brissett. Now, this is nothing unusual, mind you. Tyquan Thornton usually plays well in the spring, plays well in the summer at training camp, but once the pads are on, once they're in the preseason, once they're in the regular season, that's where he struggled. So hopefully this continues into training camp, into preseason, into the regular season, and we get some Tyquan Thornton action that we've been waiting to see since he was drafted, and he doesn't go down as another N'Keal Harry, Bill Belichick draft bust. But it's going to take a lot for him to get a roster spot. Right now, as far as I see, he's competing for the 6th wide receiver spot. He's competing for that with Juju Smith-Schuster, who, unless he's traded or released, you would expect him to make the team. Kayshon Boutte, a guy we all forgot about, but really a developmental wide receiver who earned reps week 1, didn't get that second foot down, and we never saw him again. So I wouldn't write off Kayshon Boutte either. There's also TJ Luther, probably won't make the roster. Kawan Baker probably won't make the roster. And Jalen Reagor, who probably will, but won't get reps at wide receiver because he's more of a special teams guy. So really, Juju Smith-Schuster's future really depends on how well Tyquan Thornton performs in the next 4 months. Like, that really is it. Or in the next 2 to 3 months. And if they think Tyquan Thornton is good enough to make the roster, to be a contributor, then there may not be a spot for Juju. But it really kind of comes down to those two, and maybe Kayshon Boutte is a practice squad guy. Ultimately, maybe a team would want to pick him up if that were the case, but I think it really comes down to those 3, Juju, Boutte, and Tyquan Thornton competing for that 6th spot. Maybe they carry 7 on the roster, but that would be abnormal, so we'll see what happens there. Now, in terms of the offensive line, Sidy Sow, who was taking first-team reps at left guard last week, he was present but did not participate. He had a wrap around his left leg, so some concerns there. Hopefully not a bad injury, but the first team on the offensive line, at least today, was Chuks Okorafor at left tackle, Antonio Mafi at left guard, replacing Sidy Sow, David Andrews at center, Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, the guard, starting at right guard for the first team, and then, of course, Michael Wenu at the right tackle spot. Now, Caden Wallace, the guy that they drafted, who is transitioning from playing full-time right tackle at Penn State to left tackle in the NFL, a big shift there, has been getting a lot more reps at left tackle, at least compared to last week. So even though Chuks Okorafor is starting there and getting the first-team reps right now, we know that Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, they're prioritizing seniority right now in terms of the reps that these players are taking, at least in OTAs. Maybe that changes in training camp if Caden Wallace really looks like the real deal in year 1. And then Okorafor is the backup at left tackle. But as of right now, I'm putting my money on Okorafor starting there week 1. And then maybe Caden Wallace can start at guard or something in the meantime. There's been a lot of talk about that, but he's been getting a lot of reps at left tackle behind Okorafor. So we'll see how that plays out. But a lot of positives to report from today's OTA action. We know Drake Maye is making progress, looking more accurate than we've ever seen before. He's obviously been working on his mechanics, his footwork. Great to see Javon Baker showing flashes, Tyquan Thornton doing good things. I'm not as concerned about the receiving core. I mean, I did a pod yesterday about going after a guy like Courtland Sutton. I think if you can do it, you do it. But they got so much depth, and that's such a crowded receiving room that the guys that hit, I think, are going to be able to contribute. We know they got good tight ends, Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, Jaheim Bell, who seems to be making an impact at practice. Jacoby Brissett doing his job so far. We know the deal with Drake Maye if he's developing. Bailey Zappi, we'll see if he makes the team or not, if he's cut, if he's traded, we don't know. Biggest question mark, of course, is the offensive line. If the offensive line is bad, this whole offense is going to be bad, and we're looking at another 3rd, 4th, 2nd overall draft pick heading into next year. So it really comes down to that offensive line, and maybe even on Caden Wallace. Can he develop into a starting left tackle? And if not, can he play guard right away and bring some reinforcements there? That's ultimately what's going to make or break the Patriots, in my opinion. Not talking about the defense much, because it should be noted that Matt Judon, Christian Barmore, Jonathan Jones, Godshaw, Jelani Tavai, Josh Uche, and Sam Roberts, none of those guys participated in OTAs, so take some of this offensive production with a grain of salt. When all those guys are out there in training camp, they're probably going to struggle a little bit, and then we'll really see how good is Tyquan Thornton, how good is Javon Baker, how is Drake Maye performing against these real NFL high-quality defensive players. Like, we know the Patriots are going to have a good defense. I don't think they're going to take a step back because Gerard Mayo is still there. DeMarcus Covington did a great job last year. He's now the defensive coordinator. It sounds like Bill Belichick worked mostly with the offense with all their struggles last year, so I don't think the defense is going to take a step back. They're a top 10 defense in this league, and they might even be a top 5. So it really comes down to, is that offensive line going to be ready? We know the Pats got a good running game. They still have Ramondre Stevenson. I'm highly encouraged with Antonio Gibson. They finally have a real third down back. We'll see if there's another guy that's kind of the backup in terms of power and zone running to Ramondre Stevenson with Gibson as the third down back. But I'm not as worried about that. I'm not even that worried about the receivers. I think if Jacoby Brissett is out there, that's more than fine. If Drake Maye is ready to start, great. But it all comes down to that offensive line. If Caden Wallace can develop, if Sidy Sow does take a leap in year 2, was looking pretty good at the end of year 1. We know David Andrews will be good. We know Michael Wenu will be good. Really just depends on that left tackle spot and those 2 guard spots. If they are solid there, then this might be a middle-of-the-road offense, and as I've said many times, a mediocre offense and a top 5 defense gets you into the playoffs in the NFL, and I wouldn't bet on this being a playoff team as of right now, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, especially with some of these defensive players finally participating once training camp hits. How do these offensive players look? But overall, most of the offense was out there today with the exception of Joe Milton. We don't know what's going on there. Kendrick Bourne obviously recovering from an injury. Sidy Sow has some injury we don't know about. And of course, Cole Strange, who, in my opinion, we may never see again. If you missed my podcast last week, check that out, called The Curious Case of Cole Strange. No idea what's going on with that guy. Probably not going to be back till at least mid-season. If Cole Strange is out there and he's healthy, I think that's going to help the O-line a lot, but I don't really know. This injury seems to be lingering. We still don't know if he had knee surgery. That's going to be a big deal, whether or not he's available. But that's it for this episode of PatsCast. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to hear from you. Are you encouraged by what you've heard from the Patriots at OTAs so far? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll be back tomorrow with more Patriots coverage.